I work night shifts at a small hospital. It's quiet most nights. I like that. I can focus on my work and think about my son during the day. But that all changed a few weeks ago. On my third night, I heard a soft tapping noise. It came from the supply closet. I thought it was just the ventilation system. But the tapping got louder whenever I got close. Maybe it was just my tired mind playing tricks on me. As the week wore on, the tapping became something else. I started to hear crying. It echoed down the empty hallways. I shivered one night as I passed the waiting room. There was an elderly man sitting there. He said he could see shadows moving at the end of the corridor. I didn't know what to think. I wondered if he was confused, or if I was starting to lose my grip on reality. Then I found a blood-stained bandage outside a room that had been empty for years. I froze. My heart was racing, and I felt cold all over. I wanted to check the room, but terror held me back. What if something was in there? I didn't want to seem afraid in front of my coworkers. I just stood there, staring at that bandage until I could convince myself it was nothing. The sounds and sights piled up. I kept thinking about that patient who disappeared. He was the one with the shadows. Maybe he knew something. My mind raced, but I brushed it all aside. Could I just be tired? After all, I was working night shifts. But the memories wouldn't go away. I still wondered about the things I wasn't seeing. One night, as I walked to the broken vending machine, I heard someone whisper my name. I stopped and turned, expecting to see a coworker. But I was completely alone. I felt a chill run down my spine. I didn't know what to make of it. Was it a warning? Was it part of the hospital's tricks? Sometimes I'd be staring at the nurse's station and feel eyes on me. I'd look around, thinking it was just my mind. But it felt different, like something was lurking in the corners of the hall. I wanted to convince myself it was just my imagination. But the longer I worked there, the more I doubted my sanity. Then there was that patient again, the old man. He came back one night, his eyes wild. He said, "You have to leave." But before I could respond, he vanished into thin air. I scrambled to find him, but he was gone. No one else saw him. I felt embarrassed for worrying about shadows, telling myself it was just fatigue. I'm not sure what happened that week. I keep remembering the tapping, the cries, the bandage. I don't want to believe it was real. What if it was all in my head? But the whispers still haunt me. Sometimes when it's quiet, I think I hear someone calling my name again. Now, every night shift feels heavy. I wonder if those shadows are watching me. And I still ask myself, what if it wasn't just the hospital playing tricks on me? It was on my sixth night when things took a more sinister turn. I had just settled in at the nurse's station, battling the usual fatigue with a cup of coffee, when I heard a loud crash from far down the corridor. My heart leaped into my throat. I glanced at the clock. It was midnight, the witching hour. I stood up slowly, my legs heavy as lead. The long hallway lay in deep shadows, but I forced myself to walk toward the sound. The echoes of the crash faded the closer I got, replaced by a strange kind of silence. It felt wrong, unnatural. I approached the door to the old surgical wing, a place that had been sealed off for years. The door was ajar, just a crack, enough for my imagination to run wild. I hesitated, but curiosity pulled me in. With a deep breath, I pushed it open wider. The room was dark, and the faint smell of disinfectant lingered in the air. My flashlight swept across the room, revealing old surgical tools strewn on the floor. Some were rusted, others looked as though they had been used yesterday. It was unsettling. I felt a pull toward the back of the room, where the shadows gathered thickest. But just as I took a step forward, I heard it again, faint crying. My heart sank. It was the same sound I had heard before, echoing through the empty hallways, desperate and hollow. I wanted to run, but somehow, my feet were glued to the ground. I turned around to leave, but before I could move, I felt a presence behind me. It was brief but suffocating, as if a cold breath had caressed my neck. I whipped around, clutching my flashlight like a weapon. Nothing was there, but the air turned electric. That's when I noticed something on the floor. A small, crumpled piece of fabric lay half hidden under a gurney. I knelt down carefully and reached for it, pulling it into the light. It was a small hospital gown, stained and torn. But it was the name tag that caught my attention. It said Jason. My son's name. Panic flooded my chest, and I dropped the fabric as if it burned. What was it doing here? Was it really mine? I could hear the whisper of my name again, and it sent shivers through my bones. I didn't want to believe it, but the room felt alive, like it was reaching out to me. I bolted out of that room, slamming the door behind me. My breath came in ragged gasps. I stumbled into the hallway, desperate for the safety of the nurse's station. But the hallway twisted before my eyes. I blinked, trying to refocus, but the shadows danced and formed shapes. That's when I saw him, the old man from before. He stood at the end of the corridor, his wispy figure glowing faintly under the flickering lights. He raised an arm slowly, pointing toward me. I didn't need to hear his voice to understand the warning etched on his face. But just as fast as he appeared, he was gone. The hall lay empty again, leaving me shaking in the silence. I had to get out of this place. Whatever was happening here was no longer just in my head. That I rushed back to the nurse's station, my mind racing. I had to find answers. I couldn't ignore this any longer. But as I settled in, I realized I wasn't alone. Someone was watching me. That I turned sharply to the corner of the station, and my stomach sank. "What do you want?" I whispered, trembling as I hoped for an answer. Then everything went dark. When the lights flickered back on, I was alone in the nurse's station. My heart raced, and my hands pushed against the desk for support. I blinked rapidly, trying to shake off the overwhelming darkness that had swallowed me. My mind was still reeling from the crumpled gown, the whispered name. I leaned toward the window, hoping to catch some sense of reality. The parking lot was empty, just as it usually was at this hour. But it felt different now. It was suffocatingly quiet. I dug through the drawers for my pen and paper, desperate to write everything down before it slipped into the depths of my memory. But as I scribbled, I found it hard to concentrate. Then a loud bang came from down the hall again. I froze, pen hovering over the paper. My pulse quickened. The sound was unnerving. What could it be this time? I could go check it out, but after what had just happened, I felt paralyzed by dread. A voice broke the silence. It was low and almost melodic, filling the air around me. "Help me." It was faint but carried a weight that pressed on my chest. My thoughts raced back to the crying I had heard before, echoing through the hallways. This time, it felt closer. I hesitated, torn between staying safe in the station and investigating the sound that seemed to seep into my bones. Compelled by some invisible force, I stood up. "Stay calm," I muttered to myself, and slowly made my way toward the source of the voice. The corridor stretched before me like a dark tunnel, shadows creeping along the walls. I approached the old surgical wing again, but this time, the door was completely wide open. The room inside was shrouded in darkness, except for a dim light flickering at the far end. Hesitating just outside the threshold, I caught sight of something lying on the ground. It was another hospital gown. This one was different, clean and bleached, but eerily familiar. Heart pounding, I stepped closer, inched toward the faint light. My flashlight flickered wildly, but I could feel the urge to reach out pulling me forward. But as I reached for the gown, the whisper intensified, morphing into urgent pleas. "Help me please." Panic raced through me, and I stumbled back. Then I looked up, and my breath caught in my throat. There was a figure standing in the corner of the room, half hidden in shadow, face obscured. "Jason?" I choked out, fear clawing at my throat. The figure looked up, and for a brief moment, I saw the distinct features of my son. Dark hair, piercing eyes, the same expression of sorrow I had seen so many times in my dreams. But just as quickly, the shadows enveloped him, and he vanished, leaving behind only silence that I gasped, backing away until I hit the wall. I couldn't breathe. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Then I remembered the fabric I had found earlier. No, no, no. I muttered, my mind racing. What did this all mean? My chest tightened with fear. A desperate need to understand swept over me, driving me forward. I couldn't stop now. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned sharply, and standing at the threshold of the surgical wing was the old man, eyes dark and piercing. This time, he wasn't just a shadow. Get out, his voice rasped, deep and crackling like firewood. My resolve crumbled. I needed to escape. But as I turned to run, the lights flickered again, plunging me back into darkness. I stumbled forward, disoriented by the sudden darkness, my only instinct screaming at me to run. The air felt thick, and every nerve in my body tingled with fear. I made a quick dash down the corridor, the memory of that old man's face etched in my mind. The dim light from the nurse's station glowed ahead like a beacon. I pushed forward, but my feet felt heavy, as if the very ground was trying to hold me back. I looked over my shoulder, expecting to see him right behind me, but the corridor was empty. No old man, no whispered name, just silence. That I accelerated, skidding to a stop when I reached the nurse's station. I grasped the desk for stability, still breathless. My heart raced, but panic hadn't fully taken hold just yet. I steadied myself, forcing my mind to focus. Stay calm, I reminded myself, but my voice was trembling. I glanced toward the surgical wing again, half expecting the darkness to swallow me whole once more. But this time, my gaze was met with an unexpected sight. A small figure stood just inside the entrance, a child, not much older than 5 or 6, dressed in a hospital gown that fluttered around her small frame. "Help me," she whispered, her voice soft and fragile. It felt like déjà vu all over again. I blinked hard, convinced that my eyes were playing tricks on me. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice cracking. "What are you doing here?" She took a step closer, and the flickering light caught her face. It was pale, almost ghostly, and her eyes were wide with fear. "I can't find my mommy," she said, glancing nervously toward the darkness behind her. The desperation in her voice tugged at my heart. "Okay, let us find her," I said, even though a warning bell sounded in my mind. I stepped further into the corridor, guided by her small hand. But as we moved toward the surgery room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. That we reached the doorway, and the girl suddenly stopped. "She's not here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "She's gone." My insides twisted. A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean gone? Where did she go?" I crouched down to her level, searching her face for answers. Before she could respond, a loud crash echoed from the far end of the hallway, almost like an explosion. The sound reverberated in my chest. I shot up, instinctively reaching for the girl, but she had already stepped back into the shadows. "Help me," she echoed, and before I could reach her, she disappeared, leaving me alone in the dim light. My breath came in quick, panicked bursts. What was happening? I felt as if I was losing my grip on reality, each moment slipping further away. Then, the lights went out again. I was plunged into complete darkness. My heart raced as I fumbled to remember where I was. I couldn't let fear take control. I focused on the sound of my breathing, then I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate. I wasn't alone. "Who's there?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. My mind screamed for me to move, to run, but my body felt frozen, rooted to the spot. The footsteps came closer, heavy and ominous. "I told you to get out," the old man's voice echoed from the shadows. And with that, my heart sank. I knew I had to confront whatever was happening. There was only one way out of this, but what awaited me on the other side? I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the darkness. "What do you want?" I called out, still rooted to the spot. The footsteps halted, and a disconcerting silence descended. Was he waiting for me to move? Then, I heard the unmistakable creaking of the floorboards, followed by a low, raspy chuckle. Panic surged within me, urging my legs to finally respond. I turned toward the nurse's station, the dim light flickering as if responding to my distress. "Stay away from me!" I shouted, the desperation in my voice betraying my fear. My heart raced as I scanned my surroundings, desperately searching for something, a weapon, an escape route, anything. I remembered the intercom system, the only lifeline in this labyrinth of fear. I dashed back toward the nurse's station and leaned over the counter, fumbling to find the radio. My trembling hands finally located the device, but just as I pressed the button to call for help, a blast of icy air swept through the hallway. The lights flickered violently and then went out again, plunging me into suffocating darkness. My breath quickened, and I pressed the button, my voice wavering. "Help! I need assistance." Silence followed, heavier than the darkness. Anxiety knotted in my stomach as I felt the weight of unseen eyes on me. I couldn't bear it any longer. I let go of the intercom button and stumbled toward the main corridor. My instincts screamed for me to escape, yet I knew the only way out was to confront the terror at the heart of this place. That I made my way forward, barely able to see through the shadows. With every step, I felt as if something was lurking just out of view. I was acutely aware of the contrast between my ragged breathing and the deathly stillness around me, and then I heard a faint sobbing sound. It was the same soft voice I'd heard before, calling out for her mother. "Please," it said, drifting through the hall like a whisper of smoke. "I want to go home." I hesitated for a moment, caught between the need to help and the primal instinct to run. But I couldn't ignore her. I followed the sound, my heart racing as I rounded a corner. There she was, the little girl standing at the window at the end of the hallway, her silhouette framed by the pale moonlight. "Where's your mommy?" I asked, desperately trying to keep my voice steady. She looked back at me, her eyes gleaming in the dim light. "She needs to come here," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, as if in awe of the darkness surrounding us. "She's waiting." A chill crept down my spine. My thoughts raced, trying to make sense of her cryptic words. What did the little girl mean? But before I could even draw closer, the glass of the window shattered outward in a loud crash, scattering shards across the floor. Fear seized me, and I stumbled back, my eyes widening. "What is going on?" I shouted, glancing around frantically. "Time to go," a voice echoed through the hall, the old man's voice once again rising above the cacophony. It was an order laced with an ominous tone, enough to send me into motion once more. I turned and ran, the little girl fading from sight. All I knew was that I had to get away before whatever was coming found me. As I sprinted into the shadows, something cold brushed past me, and I felt a rush of panic. Someone or something was following me now. I sprinted down the hallway, my feet pounding against the cold tiles, each echo sounding like a desperate warning. The shadows reached out as if they wanted to drag me back, to swallow me whole. My mind raced with the little girl's words. She's waiting. Who was waiting? And where was her mother? I didn't look back. I could feel the chill of breath on my neck, the presence advancing close behind. I turned a corner, the corridor stretching ahead into an inky abyss. I could barely make out the outline of the exit sign flickering far away, promising sanctuary if I could just reach it, but as I ran, I caught sight of something in my peripheral vision. A door slightly ajar, room 506. Against every instinct screaming at me to keep moving, I found myself skidding to a halt. I stepped closer to the door. It was deliberately ajar, creaking slightly as the air pressed against it. "Hello?" I called, my voice cracking. "Is anyone in there?" Silence. Just when I thought I might turn away, I heard a soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingers drumming on a table. It drew me in. I peered into the room, heart pounding. A glow from an old lamp illuminated the room, revealing a strange setup. In the corner, a medical bed sat with various equipment cluttered around it. And there, by the window, stood a figure. A woman, her back to me, gazing out at the darkness. "Excuse me, are you okay?" I murmured, my voice barely a whisper. She turned slowly. Her face was pale, sunken eyes staring blankly but somehow seemed to see through me. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice eerily calm. "They are restless. Very restless." I stepped back, feeling the doorframe provide no real comfort. Who's restless?" "The children," she replied, her tone heavy with an unspoken sorrow. "They don't like it here. They're afraid." Before I could respond, the lights flickered threateningly, casting her face in harsh shadows. She smiled, but it was devoid of warmth. "You should join them, you know. It's safer over there." "No." I screamed, instinctively taking a step back into the hallway. "I can't stay." With that, the door slammed shut. I jumped, heart racing again. I glanced back, scrambling away from room 506, but it made the decision for me. The cold breath loomed nearer. My instincts kicked in. I took off down the hallway again, desperation fueling every step as I sprinted toward the exit sign. Suddenly, the lights flickered once more, and the drumming sound started again, growing louder this time. It wasn't just one set of fingers anymore. It seemed to echo from every direction. I reached the exit door, yanking it open. But as I crossed the threshold, the world beyond shifted. Instead of the parking lot outside, I was engulfed by an endless void. Panic surged. I grasped the doorframe as if it were my last lifeline. "Help!" I yelled, but the only response was the laughter mixed with sobbing that surrounded me. Overwhelmed by fear, I stepped back into the hospital, the door shutting behind me with a finality that chilled me to the bone. As I stood there, my heart racing, I realized I was not just trapped. I was being hunted. I turned back into the hallway, my breath hitching in my throat. The air felt thicker. An oppressive silence hung around me, broken only by the distant tapping still drumming, but now it seemed to pulse with urgency. "Stop," I whispered to myself. I couldn't afford to panic. There had to be a way out. The flickering lights above cast erratic shadows, creating a labyrinth of darkness where I once saw a clear path. That I hesitated for a moment, recalling the woman's haunting words about the children. Who were they, and what had happened to them? The apparent normalcy of the hospital clashed with everything I was feeling. I needed more information, but what if that just led me deeper into the darkness? Cautiously, I stepped further down the corridor, moving toward the drumming sound. It felt wrong, but an instinct pulled me closer. Maybe there was something I was meant to find. I passed one room after another, the doors lined up like sentinels. They were silent, but each one exuded a weighty presence. Then, at the end of the hallway, I spotted another door slightly open. Room 507. My stomach twisted, urging me to keep moving, but my feet betrayed me. I stepped inside, the air in the room was stale, and the soft shift of light revealed a small table covered in toys, teddy bears, dolls, and building blocks half finished. Each item seemed frozen in time. Confusion twisted through me. This didn't belong in a hospital. Then I noticed it, a stuffed bunny, tattered but meticulously arranged. Its glass eyes glinted under the flickering light, drawing me in like a beacon. Below it sat a note, hastily scribbled, "Find us." A chill washed over me. The words echoed the little girl's voice in my head. She's waiting. I grabbed the note, fingers trembling. Who was waiting, and who did I need to find? Suddenly, the room grew cold, and I felt a rush of air as if someone had whispered too close. I spun around. Empty. Just me and the toys. My heart raced faster. Panic threatened to rise again. I had to leave before it was too late. As I backed toward the door, I heard it again, the laughter. This time, it was closer, barely muffled by the walls. It was shrill and haunting, mingling with the drumming sound that had followed me all evening. Before I could react, a figure darted past the doorway. A child, or something that looked like one. My breath caught. I chased after it instinctively, squeezing out of the room and down the hall. "Stop!" I yelled, but it only laughed back, the sound chilling me to the bone. I raced on, following the echoes until I turned another corner. That's when I saw it, a small window at the end bathed in moonlight, illuminating the way. I rushed toward it, but as I neared, I stumbled. My foot caught on something, a small block. I tried to regain my balance, but it was too late. The world shifted again, and everything spun out of focus. I landed hard on the ground, and in that moment, the drumming stopped. The laughter faded, leaving only a heavy silence. I pushed myself up, shaking, heart pounding as I looked around. The hallway had changed. The walls looked older, peeling paint revealing darker shades beneath. And now, I was not alone. Someone stood at the far end, just beyond the darkness. Their face remained obscured, but I could feel their gaze piercing into me. In that moment, dread filled every inch of my body. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice echoing weakly. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it smiled, a wide, unsettling grin that curved unnaturally. A deep sense of foreboding washed over me. What was it waiting for? I had stumbled upon something I shouldn't have. Something that had been waiting all along. The figure at the far end watched me as I stood frozen, uncertainty flooding my mind. I wanted to turn and run, but my limbs felt glued to the floor. The grin widened, making the skin on the back of my neck prickle with fear. "Why are you here?" I managed to whisper, though part of me regretted speaking at all. It felt like inviting a response I didn't want. The air around grew eerily still, amplifying the noise of my own breathing. Then, something shifted. The figure stepped closer, and the dim light revealed a faint outline. It wore a faded hospital gown, like the children's seen in the rooms. My heart raced. Was this one of them? Help! The voice was barely audible, a mere echo of a plea that hung thick in the air. It felt real, yet insubstantial, as if it belonged to the shadows. "Help who?" I asked, panic rising inside me. I took a step back, my instincts urging me to flee, but curiosity locked me in place. I needed to know more. The figure pointed to a door behind it, half hidden in darkness. Something inside me screamed to run, but I was drawn to that door like a moth to a flame. "Find us." The words rumbled in my mind, the same phrase from the note. I took a deep breath and forced my feet to move. As I approached the door, the clear outline of the figure began to flicker. One moment, there was a child, the next, a shadowy shape that made my stomach churn. I swallowed hard. Whatever this was, it was not just a memory. It was more, something far darker. The moment I reached for the doorknob, the laughter returned, louder this time. It echoed around me, bouncing off the walls, mocking my fear. I hesitated, heart pounding as the cold air pressed against my skin. I couldn't turn back, not now. Pushing the door open, I stepped into the next room. The darkness swirled, and as the door creaked shut behind me, I felt a chill. This room was different. It was empty but for a cracked mirror on the wall, reflecting my wide-eyed stare. I turned to leave, but something caught my attention, a clump of colorful drawings strewn across the floor. I knelt to pick one up, and it sent a jolt through me. The image depicted children playing, but their faces were scratched out, replaced by shadows. "What is this?" I murmured, flipping through the rest. Each one was similar, vivid colors transitioned to globs of black where the children's faces should have been. A sinking sensation filled my chest. Before I could process it further, a breeze rushed through the room. The door slammed shut behind me, and the floor vibrated beneath my feet. The laughter intensified, a chorus of voices merging into a cacophony of taunts. I felt my breath quicken again, panic threatening to take over. "Please. Let me out." I shouted, but my voice was drowned out. The walls began to shift, closing in around me, then, in the mirror's reflection, I noticed something, a handprint slowly forming, smudged against the glass. I spun around, heart racing. The realization struck me hard, this was not just a place of healing. It had its own memories, its own darkness. As I faced the rumbling laughter, now deafening, I grasped the truth. I had stumbled into a world trapped in time, echoing the cries of those who had become lost. Then the laughter stopped, replaced by a whisper, "You're one of us now." A jolt of fear clawed at my throat as I recognized the voice. It was the little girl, the one I thought I had only imagined. I turned back to the mirror. My own reflection started to fade, just like the children's faces had on the drawings. I felt the ground shift beneath me, the laughter returning as I realized I had just become part of the story I was trying to escape. I stumbled back from the mirror just as my reflection vanished completely. The laughter surged, a tidal wave of sound crashing over me. My heart raced, and I pressed my hands against my ears, trying to drown it out. But covering my ears didn't help. The laughter twisted into something else, a haunting cacophony of children's voices singing out phrases I couldn't quite grasp. It was like a chant, a rhythmic repetition that spiraled deeper into my mind. "Find us. Find us. Find us," they echoed. Suddenly, a loud crash broke through the song. The room shook, throwing me off balance. I staggered to regain my footing. The floor seemed to ripple as if it had a life of its own. I glanced back at the mirror. It now displayed a swirling mist where my reflection should have been. With urgency creeping in, I turned toward the drawings scattered on the floor. I scooped up the crumpled papers, searching for anything, a name, a clue that might help me understand what was happening. My fingers trembled as I fanned through them again. On one, I found a name scrawled in childish handwriting, Lily. "Lily," I whispered, feeling an odd connection spark in my chest. I didn't know how long I had been in this room, but the moment I said her name, the atmosphere shifted. The air thickened as shadows began to crawl along the walls. I could feel the whispers ramping up around me, almost calling for her. Desperately, I shouted into the darkness, "I'm here. I don't want to be part of this. Help me." The response came swiftly, the shadows coalesced, forming the outline of the girl I had seen before, flickering like a faulty light bulb. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice now clearer than before. There was a sadness in her tone that struck deep. "You shouldn't have come. I found a drawing." "Lily, is that your name?" I stammered, trying to connect. "Are you one of them?" Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "You're not supposed to know our names. You're not supposed to find us." I could feel the shadows closing in around us. They danced on the edges of the room, threatening to swallow everything whole. "But why? People need to know. We need your help." The girl shook her head sadly. "You can't help us. You can only join us." As she spoke, the shadows surged forward, wrapping around her, pulling her deeper into the darkness. The laughter erupted again, now mixed with anguished sounds, shrieks that cut through the noise, piercing my mind like needles. "No!" I screamed, reaching out, trying to grab her, but the shadows yanked her away, leaving behind only the drawings, crumbled and torn. I couldn't let this happen. I wouldn't let fear take me. Determined, I rushed toward the door, but it felt impossibly far. The shadows tried to trip me, to drag me back. I could feel the chill of their grasp on my ankles. Panic surged. Then everything went dark. A stinging sensation shot through my hands, and I realized I was clutching something tightly. Ripping it free, I found it was a small, tattered notebook, embedded among the scattered drawings. With every ounce of strength, I made my way to the door, clutching the notebook to my chest, shoving the door open. I poured myself into the next room just as the shadows howled in frustration behind me, but as the door swung wide, I felt a new presence. Someone was there, waiting for me. My breath caught in my throat, and a chill crept down my spine as I glimpsed a figure shrouded in darkness. The figure remained still, but the air hummed with tension. My heart raced as I tried to comprehend what lay before me, its shadowy form rippling as if it could evaporate into the darkness at any moment. "You shouldn't have come here," a voice dripped like honey, but with an undercurrent of something menacing. It felt familiar, and as fear tightened around my chest, I realized it was the same voice I'd heard taunting me through the halls. "Who are you?" I managed to croak out. I felt like a fool, repeatedly asking questions without answers. The figure only stepped closer, their features becoming clearer, but still concealed by an inky fog. I couldn't discern their face, but the piercing gaze left me feeling more exposed than ever. "My name is of no importance," it responded, its tone softer now, almost gentle. "What matters is that you have unlocked the path to our realm, to the others who linger within the shadows." Memories flooded my mind: the crying child, the old man, the little girl named Lily, all fragments that felt too connected to dismiss. "I just want to leave. I didn't ask to be part of this." The sounds of laughter echoed in my ears again, unsettling and cruel. "Leave?" The figure stepped even closer, a sweeping movement that felt disorienting. "You are here because you sought to understand, to find what was lost. But now that you've seen, you cannot unsee. You are one of us now." I stumbled backward. "No, please. I don't want that. I have a son, Jason. He needs me." My voice cracked, the reality of my life pushing through the dawning comprehension of this twisted realm. At the mention of his name, the figure paused, a flicker of surprise penetrating the gloom. "He cries for you, you know. Inquisitive, just like you. But the veil between our worlds is thin, and only one can cross to find comfort." Rage ignited within me, mingling with desperation. "If you know anything about Jason, help me. I swear I'll find a way to free you all." I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, the hard truth of my situation dimming the flickering light around us. "Finding us will cost you dearly," the figure whispered, almost mournfully. "There are sacrifices to be made." I fought against the creep of fear, the sense that whatever was in front of me could manipulate my intentions. "What do you mean? Sacrifices?" "I'll do anything." A low chuckle escaped the figure, sending chills down my spine. "Haunting melodies of loss guide the innocents. Decide who must leave and who must stay." The shadows behind it warped and twisted, as if echoing its ominous intentions. "Are you willing to condemn another? To reclaim what is yours? What are you asking?" I cried, desperate to grasp the fragments swirling around me. Memories of laughter, of joy, came to mind: my son climbing trees, running through a park, his hand in mine. But shadows threatened to consume those images. "Your other life is weighed against the lives that blink in the dark," it whispered. "Release one, and reclaim another." The remainder of the room trembled, energy swirling with anticipation, as if it awaited my decision. Panic slammed against my ribs. No. I would not be pigeonholed into choices with such profound implications. My instinct screamed against any bargain. "You want me to condemn a child? I would never." I stepped back, prepared to face the closeting gloom in front of me, and then, in the midst of the tumult, I caught a vision of a flicker and exit. An overlooked door that opened up toward a familiar light, the promise of freedom shimmering before me. My heart surged with newfound hope and desperation. Instead that I ran, pushing through the darkness as it clung to me, clawing at my feet. Ignoring earned trust and promises, I barreled toward the luminous doorway. But just as I neared it, I heard a fragile whisper cut through the frantic laughter surrounding me. "Mommy?" My blood ran cold. It was Jason. No, no, no. Turning, I found the flickering form of a child standing beyond the darkness. Mommy, not my hope, but a tether pulling me back. "Help." As I strained to reach him, the shadows surged forward, vying for my steps, grasping at my limbs. Let me go. I want to leave you. But my legs felt heavy as the world twisted and churned around me. Choose. The voice called again, echoing all around. I staggered as I turned back toward the flickering figure, its shape growing clearer. But it pulsed still with that mocking grin, taunting me with impossible choices. Choose. I could feel Jason's echo in the air. Choose. Everything around me churned. Silence met chaos, darkness met light. I gasped, my fingers closing around courage. I choose to save him. My voice boomed above the laughter, above the echo of haunted memories. I hurled my weight against the door, desperate to breach the remaining distance. The moment I burst through, I was engulfed in light. Time seemed to distort, seconds stretching like hours as I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the pull of shadows. The laughter fell away, replaced by dim echoes that seemed to flicker out. With a final surge, I felt a gentle hand clasp mine, her voice echoing boldly, "You want to be alone." And then the world flared white. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the cold tiles of the hospital floor, the familiar sounds of soft beeping machines pulling me from the edge of forgotten dreams. I gasped, uncertain of how I had arrived there, fear tumbling through me. The weight of truth pressed against my lungs, a haze lifting as images blurred in and out, dark and flickering around me as if they were escaping like wisps of smoke from a dying fire. I quickly scrambled to my feet, scanning the corridor. The hospital stood silent. I was alone, or so I thought. In the fragile silence, I heard the faintest whisper of a child's voice. "Mommy." Without a moment to lose, I took off down the corridor. Who was waiting now? Was it Jason? The shadows lingered just behind me, relentless. Questions wove through me like stitches holding an open wound. The night was alive again, and I knew I had scoured the surface of something much darker. I had escaped. Yet, unease welled like tides against dreams now intertwined with nightmares that I rushed forward, uncertain whether I had truly left, even as the whispers grew louder, echoing around the hollow hallways, waiting for me with every trembling step.